Now, we've been talking about Henry VIII and his kind of sordid love life. Um, all of that stuff is kind of interesting. They have made so many movies and television series about Henry VIII because his life's interesting, right? He's like, first of all, he's a king, so like all the majesty, but there's all this intrigue, and it's the same reason why people watch like Riverdale and reality TV is they want to see the drama. But it's important to remember that all of his personal indiscretions have political outcomes. They have political consequences. So today we're going to talk about the Spanish Armada and the switch from the Tudor dynasty. So Henry VIII makes Protestant church. We went over all of that. Then his son goes even more Protestant, Edward VI. Then his daughter, Mary, tries to make it Catholic. She dies. Her sister, Elizabeth, makes it extremely Protestant again. Now, at this point in history, the person or the country that is most, press the wrong button, sorry. The country that is most powerful in Europe is Spain. That's the reason Henry can't get a divorce, because Spain blocks it. And Spain has discovered the New World, and they are pumping out boatloads, literal boatloads of gold. So they are wealthy, they are powerful, and they are mad at England. They were mad first because of all the drama and the disrespect, but then they get even more mad because of these English sea dogs. Do you remember what the English sailors were doing that was really upsetting the Spanish? Does anybody remember that at all? Kezia? What were they doing?
They were saying the
Sorry, you kind of glitched out there for a second. Can you try again?
They went to go to ships and their gold and then cut England.
Yes, I think you're right. They were stealing the gold from Spain, right? So, dang it, I wish I had a map. The New World, there's the Caribbean. So Spanish ships would come from Spain. They would pick up all of the gold from Mexico, and then they would ship it back along the southern coast of the United States, past Florida and back to Spain. So English pirates would hang out in places like Jamaica, the Bahamas, the Caribbean islands, and wait for the ships to pass and then attack them, take all the gold, kill all the pirates. Now, one common misconception about pirates, or a couple. Number one, do you think that pirates ever buried their gold? Why or why not? You're correct. Lucy, why not bury the gold?
They didn't bury the gold because they would probably use it for things like food, supplies, and they would need it for things. They wouldn't just bury it. There's no point in that.
Yeah, if you actually, and I know none of you would, but if you robbed a bank and you knew people were coming to arrest you and you could be thrown in jail or whatever, all of the millions of dollars you stole, you wouldn't bury under the ground. You would spend it. In fact, pirates, I wish we had more time to talk about pirates, had this motto of live like a king for a day, right? Because the punishment for piracy is one thing, and that is death. So whether you steal just a little bit or you steal a lot, if they catch you, they'll hang you. And you could be a pirate not even by choice. Let's say Aaron was a merchantman and he was sailing in one of these ships that gets attacked by the pirates. The pirates come aboard and they point a gun and say, you have two choices. You can be a pirate with us, or I can shoot you and throw your body in the ocean. Well, what are you going to choose? Right? You're going to be a pirate. But then if you get caught with the rest of them, they hang you. They're not going to listen to you, but hey, they made me, I was either going to. So, pirates were raiding, but they were spending all that gold. So obviously the Spanish don't like that. And they know that Elizabeth is behind it. They know that she is offering them protection. They know that she is getting a cut. They know all of these things. So, but there's a problem with invading England. Does anybody know why it's difficult to invade England? Think about what you know about England's geography. Why is it harder to invade England than France? Kingston?
Because England is an isle.
Is
a island.
Perfect. Yeah.
And
sorry, I had to meet you. We're always low on time. He's right. England is an island. So if you want to invade France, you just walk across and you're in France. If you want to invade England, you have to get in a boat and sail there. So the Spanish know that this is difficult, which is why England has not been conquered as much as France or Germany. So they're going to build the biggest ship fleet in the world. And Prince Philip, the king of Spain at the time, cuts down a whole forest, building this huge fleet, the Spanish Armada. And each one of these ships is huge. It's got, 50, 75 cannons. It's like, think of Pirates of the Caribbean, the movies, right? Those big pirate ships. They weren't all pirate ships, right? And they have the rows of guns. And each one of those ships is carrying soldiers. And the idea is that the Spanish Armada is going to sail to England, destroy the English Navy because it's much larger, then sail right up the Thames and bombard London, and then just destroy England and basically make it a Spanish state. And the Spanish Armada sets off in 1588, and it is easily 3 times as big as the entire English Navy. And not only that, these ships are bigger and have more weapons. So when the Spanish Armada comes, the Protestants there are praying to the Lord for deliverance. Because if Spain does conquer England, how is it going to go for the Protestants, do you think? And why would they be targeted specifically? Lucy?
Because Protestants believe different than the Catholic Church, and then Spain is a Catholic. They believe in Catholicism, so they would be like in big trouble and kill them. Mostly.
Exactly. Now today, I have had friends that were Catholic. I didn't fight them. They didn't burn me at the stake or anything. But in the 1500s, this was a big deal. And so we talked about the Inquisition and people being burned at the stake and being tortured for their beliefs. So if the Spanish win, this is going to be bad news for the English, especially the Protestant leaders. So as the Spanish come, things are looking bad. But a storm kicks up and it blows the ships off course because they're sailboats, right? So you only go where the wind blows you. So if the wind blows you that way, you're going that way. And so the Spanish fleet, when it reaches England, is not set up. It's not organized. They're kind of scattered all around. And so England has the advantage. And they use another thing. They use a surprise. They would have what were called fireboats. And they were like small boats, and they would load them with barrels of gunpowder. And they would have just a couple guys on them. And they would put tar and other flammable things on it, and they'd start sailing it towards a ship. And as it got close, they would light the ship on fire and then jump off the side. Then the burning ship full of gunpowder would start sailing towards the Spanish ships. Now, when the Spanish ships see the burning death boat coming towards them, they start evasive maneuvers, right? And so hopefully the English wanted these ships to hit another ship, blow up, and burn the Spanish ships down. But even if they didn't catch anybody, they would screw up all of the laid plans of the Spanish. Did that make sense? So it's using tactics like this that the English are able to defeat the Spanish Armada in this huge upset. And to add insult to injury, as the Spanish Armada tries to sail away, another even bigger storm hits them, and smashes their ships along the rocky coast of England. So not one, but two storms hit the Spanish Armada, and the English sailors outperform the Spanish. And for the English, this looked like divine providence, right? You have Catholic Spain and Protestant England. So for the people of the time, what do you think they believed about God in this victory? What do you think they thought about that, Cash?
They thought that God wasn't on their side, it's only on ours.
Right? Exactly. But in the Bible, God takes sides a lot, right? He's on the side of the Israelites at Jericho, right? They shout and play the trumpets, all the walls fall down. The Assyrians are surrounding Jerusalem. The heavenly hosts come and blind the enemy, and right? So they thought God is on our side, and that means Protestant is right because he sent two storms and killed all of the Spanish. And so they have a big feast of Thanksgiving. And it was also very good for Elizabeth because at this time, they thought that women could not lead in general, but in particular, that women could not lead an army, right? Now, Elizabeth was not on one of the ships waving a sword, but she was the person in charge. She chose the generals and the admirals. She's the one that helped build the fleet. So this adds to Elizabeth's reputation, right? She was this strong woman. She refused to get married in a time when that's all that women were allowed to do. She led the English to victory over the Spanish Armada. She built up the arts. She is the one who commissions the King's Men, who later become known as the King's Players, or Shakespeare and his group, right? So this is a time of like English Renaissance, and Elizabeth is at the head of this. She also reigns for a long time. She lives until I think in her 80s, but she has a problem. Now, many women today like to kind of spruce up their overall look using what? What do women use, and some guys use to make themselves look more beautiful? Kezia?
Yup.
Yeah, makeup, right? And you could get, I don't know much about makeup. L'Oreal or one of the Kardashian girls has a makeup line, right? Then you have foundation, right? You got the lipstick, the eyeliner, but all of that stuff is made out of modern ingredients. Back in the day, if you were a woman, you wanted your skin to look as white as possible. Now, it may have been in a racist way, but it's not for the reason that you think. Why do you think they wanted their skin to look pale? Have you ever seen paintings of people like back in the day? They look like Casper the Ghost, right? Why did they want, the men would even powder their faces. Why do they want to look that white? Lucy?
Because I thought it was because they wanted to look fair and like they wanted to look like sophisticated, because back then that was what they were trying to do.
Yeah, but they are trying to look fair. They're trying, but why? What is it like today? We go to tanning salons, right? We go to the opposite. People go out and just lay at the beach to get darker. Why do you think they made their skin lighter? These are already, it's not like a race thing. These are already white people. They're trying to make themselves even whiter. Why do you think, Kingston?
Because they wanted themselves to look like they were like above everybody else.
Yes, but how does being lighter skin mean that? You're right.
Because the people who have a more dark skin are lower, and they want to look. If you're overly white, then that means you're like overly awesome or overly over everybody else.
Yeah, that's true. You're right about all those things, but there's a reason. I'm gonna let Kezia try, and then I'll say it. Hopefully the audio works. Go ahead, Kezia. Dang it, I can't. I'm sorry, dude. I can't hear you. It's because if I was a peasant, right, I would be outside working all day, right? And if you're out in the sun digging ditches all day, what's going to happen to your skin? It's going to tan, right? So if you were a peasant, you would have tan skin because you'd be out in the dirt all day. If you were a rich aristocrat, you would be inside all day, right? So if you're sitting inside a house and no sun's hitting you, your skin would be pale, right? So we get this equation, and that's why men like powder their face. Have you ever seen like any of those movies where like they have the white wigs and their faces look all weird? The reason I say that is this was kind of a fashion of the time. Just like today, have you ever seen kids that like sag their jeans? Right? If you think about it, it's like the silliest nonsense. Your pants are like gonna make you fall. We could see your underwear, but it's cool right now, right? Back then, like men wearing heels was cool. I say all this because Elizabeth and many of the women back then used their makeup to whiten their face, which included white lead. And lead is poison. And so Elizabeth and many other women, not knowing this, poisoned themselves by using this white makeup. If after this class you have a chance, Google pictures of Elizabeth I, and you'll see, like when she's young, she looks like a normal, like pretty young lady. Towards the end, she looks like this weird monster with like white face and orange hair shooting out. Anyways, I think all that kind of stuff is interesting. When we think about these people of the past, they seem like, oh my goodness. But, she was vain and she was worried her hair was falling out and anything. But she is a great ruler and she carries the English through this Spanish threat. Now, when she dies, she has no kids. Why? Well, you don't have to get into the details. Why doesn't she have any kids, Noah?
Because she wanted to rule the kingdom by herself.
Yeah, which means what?
That means there was no king willing to.
Right? So she never got married. And under the context of the past, you couldn't have kids unless you were married. So she's the virgin queen. She never has any kids. But when she dies, that is a problem, right? Henry VIII was chopping ladies' heads off because he was so worried about having an heir and a successor. When she dies, there are no more Tudors. And so that is the end of the Tudor dynasty. So you had Henry VII, Henry VIII, Mary I, Elizabeth I, Edward VI. But that's all over. And her nephew or grandnephew, James I of Scotland, or James VI of Scotland, becomes James I of England. Now, here's where we're going to get a little bit off topic, because the rest of this week, we're going to talk about larger movements because we have to do the world wars of Europe. So this is kind of the last we're going to talk about, like purely like English monarchy. The Stuarts are Scottish. So remember when you did that map page and there was England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Republic of Ireland? Throughout history, those countries saw themselves as very different. And Wales was its own country until the 1200s. So England was just one more country. But when the Stuarts, even in Elizabeth's time, there's the Kingdom of England and there's the Kingdom of Scotland. When James becomes king of England, you see the beginning of Scotland and England becoming Great Britain. Did everybody get that? It starts with the Stuart monarchs, and you see England, Scotland, and Wales becoming one country. When you see the English flag, the Union Jack, and it's got the red kind of X with a bar through it, and the blue, all of those are the flags of the three countries put together. Anyways, so he becomes king of England and Scotland. There's a problem, though, because he is a Catholic. Why is that a problem, do you think? Cash?
Because in England, everybody was province, whatever.
Protestant. Yeah, right. Now,
Protestant.
and remember, this wasn't just like they weren't Protestant, like, oh, you know, I had a buddy who tried to be, this was a long time ago, I had a buddy who tried to be a Hare Krishna. Don't ask me why. Have you ever seen those guys at the airports with the ponytails and they have the shaved heads? And he was like a Hare Krishna for like 6 months. And then the next time I saw him, his hair was all grown out. I was like, what happened? He's like, I don't want to be a Hare Krishna anymore. He was very flippant. Back then, it was, like I said, is very serious. And so they had gone through years of the Bloody Mary and divorces and beheadings. And so James the First is he's the heir to the throne. But England is not about to just change back to being Catholic. So they make James swear on a Bible and convert to Protestantism. And in exchange for converting, he becomes King of Scotland and England. Okay. Now, but he and his family, his successors, the Stuarts, are kind of in their heart of hearts still Catholic. So they're Protestant on the outside, Catholic on the inside. But James is very devout. In fact, he makes the first English Bible. Most of you guys probably read the NIV Bible, the New International Version. Is that what you guys use in Miss Alanise's class? There's also the New American Standard, right? These are different translations, and if you read the different Bibles, you would notice that they sound a little bit different. Then there's the King James Bible. Any of you guys ever read the King James Bible? And it kind of has like that old sounding, for lo, the Lord hath seen upon the earth the beginnings of the great calamities, right? That's the King James Version. And it's written not by him, but King James the First of England says, we need an English Bible. And so he creates the King James Version. Everybody with me? But he wants absolute power. And so he constantly is butting heads with Parliament. Remember Magna Carta? I know there's a lot to digest. So James and Parliament don't get along very well. And so they kind of fight the whole time. And when James dies, his son, Charles, becomes king. And Charles, just like his father James, believed in the divine right of kings. Does anybody know what this word means? Maya's doing math. Assume Kaylee and Kingston are doing some kind of thing. Thank you, Lucy, for bailing me out. What does the divine right of kings mean, do you think?
The divine right of kings,
Mm-hmm.
how much power they have and how much they don't. Like
Exactly.
what they can do and what they don't, the limits.
That is exactly right. But also the idea that they are kings because God chose them to be kings, right? If God chooses them to be kings, should there be limits on their power? No, because God has directly chosen me. Does that make sense? It's like, you know how like God makes everything happen in the earth, right? So anything bad that happens is his will. So they would say that if I'm king, that's because God wanted me to be king. Did you kind of get that at all? Right. So people who become president aren't president because of divine right. They're president because we elect people. But the kings are just born. So they say, God wanted me to be king. That's why I am. So divine right of kings means that a king should have absolute power. But if a king has absolute power, then that means Parliament has no power. So you see the conflict? Kings want all the power, Parliament wants power, and they're fighting. James dies before things kick off. But his son, Charles, is even more difficult than his father. And they have this conflict that finally breaks out into the English Civil War. And the English Civil War breaks out because of the Parliament wanting power and Charles wanting power. Now, if we were still in school and we had more time, we would talk more about the English Civil War because it's very interesting, but we don't have time. And we have to skip ahead. So the end of your book, like I said, talks about World War II, and it talks about the different countries. Because we don't have time to go through your book, I'm going to be assigning homework from your book. But when we meet together, I'm going to be talking about the run-up to the 20th century so that you have an understanding of why things are the way they are today. Did everybody get that? So you don't necessarily need to read your book for our lectures. That's just for your homework. All right. So World War I and World War II are a combination, this is the last thing before we leave, of three motivations. Number one is globalization. Does anybody know what this word means? Globalization. Oh, well, we don't have time, so I'll just tell you. Globalization means the interconnectivity of the globe. If you lived back in the 1300s, you did not travel to Hong Kong or to Acapulco. Today, all of our life is interconnected with the other parts of the world. For example, we are all in our houses because of what disease? Noah?
The coronavirus.
Coronavirus. Where did the coronavirus come from? Xavier?
Asia.
Yes, where? What particular place in Asia? Kezia? In China, in Wuhan, China, right? And it went from China in basically January to we're all locked down in Los Angeles because we are so connected. My phone is made in China. My shirt was made in Vietnam. My shoes were made in Jamaica. My avocados came from Mexico. My car comes from Japan. Does that make sense? Globalization. We can talk on the, I still see friends from Hungary and Poland. So globalization, that starts in the 1700s. Globalization, industrialization, and nationalism. I know those are some kind of confusing things, but those are the three things that we want to try to remember. So on Wednesday we'll do science. On Friday, we talk together again about history, globalization, industrialization, and nationalism. Try to remember those. I'll be extremely impressed if you can. All right, guys, have a great day. I'll see you on Wednesday. Thank you for participating.